He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. 2000X He-Man. The Mike Young He-Man. The cartoon that finally showed the on-screen story of how Prince Adam became He-Man. Hello and welcome to Scrolls of Eternia. I'm your host Jukka, and I will be covering the 2002 He-Man cartoon by Mike Young Productions. This video here will give a quick background to the events leading up to the animated show. Now, being a huge fan of Masters of the Universe, I could talk about the property all night long, but I'll try and keep things short. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe was a successful toy line debuted in 1982 by Mattel. The animated show by Filmation Studios made the brand even more popular, so much so that the many fans still to this day remember the classic cartoon. After the initial run of the toys and cartoon, there was a sister show called She-Ra Princess of Power by Filmation with dolls by Mattel. By 1987, He-Man had run its course, but Mattel tried to give He-Man a new life and they took a new direction in 1989 by sending He-Man and Skeletor into the future, where a whole new cast of characters awaited in a space adventure setting. The animated show to accompany the toys was done by Jetlag. However, this didn't become the success that the previous incarnation was, and by the early 90s He-Man's popularity died. The majority of the fans were growing up, and new kids had new brands like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, Transformers, and others. So, for the longest time, He-Man fans didn't have any cartoon, comic, or toys that would have kept the property alive. But in that time, the internet was becoming more and more available to people, and some fans started their own websites dedicated to Masters of the Universe. Back then, if you had the knowledge or server space to make your own website, you were God among men. The information on those websites was still forming as more and more fans started discovering them and sharing information they had via email. Mailing lists also were a good place for fans to interact, before the discussion forums became the norm. And by the end of the 90s, there already were some established places to find information about the toys, cartoon, comics, and more. One of the biggest fan sites was He-Man.org, which became even more diverse later as it joined forces with Masters Unbound and the He-Man and She-Ra episode review websites. A personal holy trinity, I might add. By the year 2000, the He-Man.org forums were very active with fans debating about age-old questions, like, is Scareglow the ghost of Skeletor himself? And whatever topics they could think of. At the time, Mattel was planning to relaunch He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, but before that they released the commemorative toy line of select vintage figures. This was Mattel's way of igniting the interest for fans and moved ahead to create the new toy line sculpted by the Four Horsemen that were showcased in 2001. It was also announced that an animated series in 2002 would accompany the toy line and that it would be done by Mike Young Productions. Personally, I'm a huge fan of the 2002 cartoon by Mike Young and the comic done by MV Creations. Toys themselves didn't do much for me, but when discussing the cartoon, one does not simply ignore the Four Horsemen and their input for the toy line. From the detailed designs came the uniquely sculpted toys, and the cartoon followed those models. They deserve all the credit for updating the character designs while maintaining them still recognizable. Mattel showcased the new sculpts at the San Diego Comic-Con in 2001, and were met with mixed feelings from the fans. Some fans were not happy with the smaller physical frame of the familiar muscle-bound characters, while others welcomed these new designs. He-Man especially had gone through a lot of changes when the Four Horsemen worked on him. In early stages he was much bulkier, and had long hair fit within the barbarian aspects. Due to Mattel testing the product with a kid audience, He-Man went through at least 4 changes to his hair alone, landing on a shorter version that had a spiky anime feel to it. Another heated topic for the fans was the new power sword that He-Man came with. This originally came from an idea by the Four Horsemen, where the story would continue with the premise that Skeletor had finally obtained the 2 halves of the power sword, and gained more control over Eternia, with heroes fighting back. Man-at-Arms and the Sorceress had created a mechanical power sword for He-Man in this story concept. Mattel didn't use the story, but the toys still had Skeletor come with a dual-bladed sword that bore similarity to the original Power Sword, and He-Man had the mechanical Power Sword. In the cartoon, both of these would be used with face value. For story purposes, Mike M Productions looked at the original series Bible from Filmation, written by Michael Halperin, and contacted him to create a new series Bible for this new version. Mattel also contacted the people behind the He-Man and the She-Ra episode review website, James Eatock and Zadok Angel respectively, to write an extensive guide of all the Filmation characters. This would later be utilized when the creators picked out characters that previously only had cartoon appearances and would get a facelift in the new cartoon. The Mike Young Productions He-Man has been hailed for its tight continuity, action-packed animation, and exploring characters' origins. How well did they handle it all? I will get to that in future videos.
Hero shall emerge to protect Eternia. You shall be transformed into a great warrior.
By the power of Grayskull!